everybody? My name is the Black Hunter Brooklyn Vale, and welcome to round 3 of Nerdgasm. This is the semifinals. We have Brother Tim Brzakala taking on Mr. VHS, Nazario Montenegro, formerly known as Bundy, what's-his-name. It would sure to be a very back-and-forth shootout-style match. Before we go to competitors, we have to introduce our other judges. The other Nerdgasm showrunner, Mr. Caleb Coho. Caleb, how are we doing on this fine Sunday?
I'm doing good. I didn't realize I was a Nerdgasm showrunner, but I guess I'm like an executive producer. I don't know how this works, but this is fun. I'm glad to be here.
You're like the stand-in. You're like our secretary for like whatever Cody and I can't fill in. Like you're the other guy. Also, we decided to make you a clone and give you somehow a worse last name, and that is Caleb Boatman. He'll be our third judge today. Caleb, you have not yet competed in Nerdgasm, but you are a experienced debater. How do you feel about these two competitors hopping into the ring?
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Hi, I'm Caleb Littleboat Boatman. I'm here to hate movies that everyone else likes and be beat up on by Caleb Coho and Cody Newberry. He's not here, so only Coho.
Well, Cody is always here in spirit. There's always just an aura or a presence of his angriness. But enough of our judges. Let's get to our competitors, starting off with the lower-ranked, our number 16 seed, Nazario Montenegro. You were under a mask of Buddy, what's-his-name. You have beaten Richard Schwartz. You've beaten Ryan Purvisson to get here. Now you're facing Tim, somebody of the Fellowship. How do you feel about going up against somebody who has been under Cody's ranking, who's deemed to be one of the better debaters in the community?
It's interesting. I think I've never played Tim before, trivia or otherwise, or debates. So I don't really got much reference. I did watch that Brian Fernandez match, which was hilarious, but I don't think you can get much an idea of a competition right there. So I'm looking forward to it. Excited. I like the questions better than the other matches, so it should be interesting. Let's see what happens.
All right, best of luck to you, sir. And your opponent, he is deemed Brother Tim in these leagues, famously known as the brother-in-law of Robert Parker. Tim, you competed against Brian Fernandez, and then you had a very nice back and forth against Jim Green. A very, very, very close match. Why can I talk? Anyways, you're going up against Nazario, who has seemed to be sort of the dark horse of this tournament, coming in unexpectedly and pulling out some huge victories. How do you feel?
Yeah, like you said, that match with Jim that I had was very back and forth. After that match, I'm not going to take anything for granted. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm a winner, I'm going to win, because I just don't know. I feel prepared. I've prepared for this. I'm ready to go, but if it happens to go Nazario's way, that's fine. But yeah, I'm excited to play. We'll see what happens.
All right, so how it's going to work, guys, there are 3 prep questions and 2 speed-round questions. We did a process of drafting and giving them the questions, and they submitted answers accordingly. The prep questions are going to have a 1-minute opening followed by a 5-minute free form and then a 45-second closer. And then the person who gets the 2 judges' approval, they will get the point. First 3 points wins. Whoever wins this match moves on to the final. So let's move into question number 1. Your category was Disney live action, and your question is as follows: pitch a reboot of a Disney live action film. Tim, you are the higher ranked competitor, so you're going to be going first on this one. You have 1 minute. Time begins whenever you start.
So I went through the catalog of live-action Disney films that I think deserved a reboot, and I ultimately went with National Treasure. Now, I'm not going to do a remake of National Treasure. That's not what I'm pitching. I'm pitching more of a reboot in the style of like The Force Awakens, where we reboot the franchise, but it's technically a sequel. So I'm going for National Treasure 3. It's still going to be directed by John Turteltaub, the same writers, Cormac and Marianne Wibberley. It's still going to star Nick Cage and Justin Bartha, but the twist here is that it's also going to star Olivia Cooke and Dylan O'Brien as Nicolas Cage's son and daughter, and Ben Mendelsohn as kind of the villain of the movie. And in the movie, Ben Gates is hired to go and find the Beale treasure, which is this treasure that exists. He's going to go find it. He goes missing after being hired to go find it by Ben Mendelsohn. He goes missing, so his genius daughter, Elizabeth, played by Olivia Cooke, and his reluctant son, Patrick, they go and try to find...
Time. Okay. Cool. Nazario, you have 1 minute for your pitch. Time begins whenever you start talking.
I went with an actual reboot of a franchise that has been dormant for a few decades. I'm going with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I think there's enough to mine there to make an original movie that covers the basis of what the original was, but also appreciates the developments in technology and CGI, so you can make it a lot more exciting, a lot more interesting, and a little different, maybe opening the way for different things to go. I would go with Bill Hader in the Rick Moranis role, and with Jacob Tremblay as his son, the smart one. I also thought you can use Cole Sprouse and Haley Steinfeld as some of the other kids, and start with the same basic premise, yet make it a little different. Something like the Ray can shrink the kids, but at the same time, like blow up the dog, and then the dog starts rampaging in the city while the kids are lost in the backyard. So it's similar, but it's different. And also figures something like the dog can like mess up the garden before he leaves, so they don't only have the jungle type setting when they're crossing over, but also kind of a desert, muddy kind of setting too.
Time. All right, perfect. All right, going to go to 5 minutes freeform. Only thing, guys, no filibustering. Other judges, if you feel there's filibustering, be sure to call on it. I'll be writing notes on the computer here while we're going. So if you do hear it, if you do feel filibustering, be sure to interject, and we will judge accordingly. So 5 minutes, guys, freeform. Let's go.
Yeah, so I think Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is just something that the general audience is not interested in and won't be interested in anymore. If you look at the movies, the first one made a lot of money. It did well critically, and the fans kind of liked it. But the second one dropped critically. It barely made any money at the box office. It made 76 million versus 222 in the first one. And the third one went straight to video, whereas National Treasure made more money the second time and did better with fans and critics the second time, and people want to see more National Treasure.
Then why did the franchise die if they want to see more? And besides, you're not even really pitching a full reboot. Like, the question is, you are saying it's a reboot kind of sequel with the kids of the original character, which is actually the main face of the franchise. And I think that was already tried with Indiana Jones, and you can see the kind of results that gets. So it's more of a sequel, but if you take out Nicolas Cage from the forefront, it doesn't really work, because that is the face of the franchise. His character, his projection is what keeps people interested. And honestly, National Treasure is a pretty generic kind of thing, where I think Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is quirky enough that you can pull out a big idea.
Well, the same thing you could say about Ant-Man. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is very similar to Ant-Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp, what they're doing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, having everything shrunk or big or whatever. They're already doing that, at least with National Treasure, and they never said remake. It's a reboot still. You're rebooting the franchise with new characters. You still have some familiar faces in there, and don't get me wrong, Ben Gates, Nick Cage isn't the main character of this movie. His kids are. They go looking for him because he's gone missing. They're the new ones who kind of like sweep this franchise on. And yeah, you're right. Indiana Jones, Crystal Skull sucks, but that's one movie out of how many reboots? The Force Awakens did it very, very well. There's other franchises that have done it. And I think that the reason it hasn't been done is because they've talked about it. John Turteltaub has talked about it. They just haven't found the right script. They haven't found the time. Jerry Bruckheimer, the producer, hasn't found the money, the time to do it.
So there is no interest. They don't get the money because there is no interest. And yes,
there's obviously interest because the box office and the critics have gone up and
Die
up.
Hard did the kid stuff. It sucked.
Nobody cares about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It goes down every time the box office goes down.
The Mummy did the kid stuff,
to video.
and it sucked too. Every time they try to use this thing that you're pitching, which is the kid takes the center stage, it has not worked a single time. And I'm saying you can do different things. Yes,
Force Awakens didn't work. It's like the third highest grossing movie of all time.
Whose kid is in that movie? Who's the kid that
Ben Solo? Kylo Ren? He's the kid in the movie.
Is the main character, and she's not the kid of anybody yet. We can like retcon that in episode 9, but it's not the point of we're arguing.
Not the point I'm making isn't that it's
the kid. The sequel didn't work because they went a completely different way from the original. They tried something different. Yeah, it didn't work. I'm saying you can mix it up in the new way to see what it works and what does stick. You can keep the small kids playing in the backyard, find the giant toys and the big the big things, like you say, yeah, it works on Ant-Man because it's fun and it's a fun concept. You can use it in a family film that doesn't have to be a superhero film. There's no way that two things cannot no reason why the two things cannot coexist. And I'm saying you blow up the dog so you at least get a distraction. I figure you can use the technology to make it cool. Maybe the kids got drunk with their phones and they're messaging their dad, but his dad is distracted by looking for the dog rampaging through the city and he cannot see it. Maybe they keep posting giant things on Instagram and people think it's fake news. You can even have a cameo watching this and saying, nah, this looks fake.
People are already like bored by the Ant-Man thing. Ant-Man and the Wasp was not as good as the first one. People didn't go out to see it in droves, even though it came out right after Infinity War. But everybody always goes back to the adventure film. And the adventure film, like National Treasure, people always return to films like that. Return to films that give you that a sense of like adventure and inspiring like adventure quest. You always want to be in that, but it's very clear that nobody cares about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That's why it's been dead for so long.
Why
and if you go on, people care about National Treasure.
The itself is brilliant. So yes, the franchise has been dormant for a few years. You can take it back and make it spark again. You can make it original again. There's so many different actions
by making it a copy
that they don't work because they keep dying. Because once you take out the main character and you put a kid and you say, no, this is the focus of the movie, unless you get a real famous actor that pulls people, it doesn't work. And even Shia LaBeouf couldn't pull it off with Indiana Jones. Like I said, the moment
you're like holding on to the fact that
it's
not just that they're the kids; it's a younger cast rejuvenating a franchise.
Time. Excellent. Perfect time. All right, let's go into some closing arguments. Nazario, you're going to go first on this one. 45 seconds. Be sure to wrap up your thoughts and present the judges accordingly.
I think my franchise has more potential for imagination. You can even end it after they fix all the problems, like they try to save the shrinking ray somewhere where they have other inventions and accidentally open a ray that opens to a different dimension and set up a sequel with different dimensional time travel, which would be brilliant. I think his idea is too generic of a concept. If you take Nick Cage out because they're looking for him, so he's not going to be in the main part of the movie, and that is the guy who's the face of the franchise and pulls people in. The concept of the kids carry the franchise doesn't work. I have said many examples. I have said The Mummy. I have said Die Hard. I have said Indiana Jones. You tried it, but it never really works. And I think Taika Waititi is enough clever and smart director that can have this concept and make it great, like he did with Thor Ragnarok.
Time. All right. Brother Tim, it's up to you now. 45 seconds. Be sure to wrap up your arguments and present them to the judges accordingly.
Nazario said that you take the face of the franchise away and it doesn't work. Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader are arguably the faces of Star Wars, and they took those away, and Force Awakens worked, and it's one of the biggest movies of all time. People want to see more National Treasure. The box office proves it. The critics scores and the audience scores prove it. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the first movie, it's a fine movie. The audience, it has a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 53% audience score. And it goes down every time. The box office goes down to the point where it's the third movie. And it's been dormant, as he said, for decades. Whereas National Treasure, that last movie came out 10, 11 years ago. It is time for a proper reboot like this. It hasn't been gone that long. People want to see it. It's proof on the internet. People want more National Treasure.
Time. All right. Interesting argument. It's a nice back and forth. I'm going to get my voting out of the way first, and then I'll pass it off to the other judges. So essentially what I got from here is essentially Nazario's pitch was a more traditional, I guess, reboot, where it's like we're gonna take the concept but add in different people. You mentioned like Taika Waititi and Bill Hader. Tim's reboot was also good. It was more so like a passing of the torch, which examples have been provided for various films. I'm gonna give my point to Tim because his pitch was just got a little more structure out of it, and there was a little more plot devices, and there was, he brought up the great point of the third one went right to VHS. So I don't know if the company has a lot of faith in it, and he gave a good example because I think Nazario had a really good haymaker of if if the movies have gone to 3 films, then why has there not been like another one in the works? You gave a great defense of, like, you know, the script isn't been ready. They don't have the time right now. The budgets are sort of constrained. So I think that's where Tim gets my vote. But I'm not alone here. I have 2 other judges. I'm going to go to Caleb Boatman next. So Caleb, who gets your vote and why?
Yeah, both competitors here had good arguments. I think both gave me at least somewhat of an idea of what their movies would be like and the different directions the movies would take. I think that Nazario gave me a little bit more plot-wise with, like, the dog in the backyard and different ideas and scenes, and gave me more of an idea that way. And I think the Indiana Jones Die Hard defense really worked well for him. I think that kind of hit on that we've seen this plot before. So I'm giving my point to Nazario, actually.
All right, so we are split. It goes to Mr. Coho. Caleb, who will be getting our first point of the afternoon?
It was a really good fight. Both made really good pitches. There was one point that wasn't made that would have severely destroyed one other person's point. I made this a lot clearer for me if Tim had mentioned that National Treasure 3 is actually in development for Disney+. But regardless of that fact, I'm giving my point to Tim because I think Tim's pitch was really cool. And his arguments, his defense is like Force Awakens is one of the highest grossing movies of all time, and it follows that same sort of formula. Really worked for me. I think he defended against the Indiana Jones argument really well. And I think that Nazario kind of got hung up on that argument.
All right, well, Tim does strike first in our race to 3, 1-0. We are going to scoot right on into question number 2. We went to the DCEU / Worlds of DC, however you want to interpret it. And the question number 2 is as follows. What is the best scene in a DCEU film? So, sorry, since you went second in the last question, you're going to go first. You have 1 minute. Time begins whenever you start talking.
The best scene in the DCEU comes from one of the better films in the DCEU, which is from Wonder Woman. The scene in No Man's Land, where it's basically her coming out party in this part of the movie. She has been all set up before, and this is the first time she shows her motivations, what drives her capabilities, her power, and is in line with saving people, saving humanity, especially the town of Belt, which is under control by the Nazis, not by the Nazis, but the Germans at this point, because it's World War I. I think it's a beautiful scene conceptually, thematically, and also action-wise. It shows what the character is and what she can achieve in a few minutes of film time. It's pretty brilliant. I can discuss it later.
All right, perfect. We are going to go over to Tim. You have 1 minute for your opening arguments. Tell us what you think is the best scene in the DCEU film.
So while I agree that scene is actually pretty great, it's not the best scene from Wonder Woman. I'll get more onto that later. But Wonder Woman is a pretty good movie all the way around. I actually picked a scene from probably one of the worst DCEU movies, and that's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I think the most popular superhero pretty much in the world is Batman. And in the Chris Nolan Batman movies, we didn't get a lot of just like hardcore Batman fighting. We did in a couple scenes, but like the Joker, it was mostly like mind games, some stuff with Ra's al Ghul, and then he gets the crap beaten out of him by Bane. But in BVS, the warehouse scene, the scene that I'm picking, you get to see Batman full Arkham Asylum style, taking down thugs and goons. It's ripped right out of the comic books of him just being the amazing Caped Crusader that he is, and it elevates a pretty meh movie to something really awesome in the matter of about 3 minutes.
Time. Perfect. And they're right on time. 5 minutes of freeform, guys. You know how it works. Well, let's go.
Please.
I'm going to speak about my scene. I think it shows who Wonder Woman is. I think she always has the motivation to save humanity. She sees that the people of the town of Belt have been enslaved by the Germans and they are suffering. And even though everybody tells her that there's no way she can go in there because there's been a year fighting and nobody has gained an inch, she just goes for it. You don't know at this point how strong she is. You don't know if she's invulnerable to bullets, but she doesn't care about the danger. She just goes there. It shows you the essence of what Wonder Woman is. And this visually is an incredible scene. It slows down so you can see how she perceives time. She can see the bullets and deflects them. And then she stands there with her shields, hailing a rain of bullets just so she can gain a little ground so people can push forward. And then it goes into the whole saving of the town of Belt, where the score swells up and just dives into the Wonder Woman theme and shows.
Well, yeah, I would argue that's a different scene. I would argue that's a different action scene that, you know, that's been her and the rest of the crew fighting in the town. But to me, the best scene in Wonder Woman is actually at the end, the moment that she has with Steve Trevor right before he sacrifices himself in a very complicated and gross ending that movie has. The end of that movie is stupid, but that scene is really, really beautiful, and it shows great. It's a great moment between those two characters. It's the most tender and beautiful scene of the movie. Going back, yeah, you talk for a long time. It's my turn. So then you go back to BVS. That movie is pretty much dog shit, the whole movie. And then you get to that, and that's the thing, is if that's the one thing that stands out, is that this Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman, is such a badass. And he goes in and just beats the hell out of these guys to do something that he necessarily didn't want to do 20 minutes ago. Superman was his enemy, and now he's there to save Martha, save now his friend's mother. It's a very noble, it's a very Batman thing to do. And yeah, you get to see Wonder Woman come up, but there's better scenes in that movie than her walking across. That action scene that follows
is a gratuitous violence scene that betrays the concept of what Batman is. I'm the Batman guy. I know what he's supposed to be, and he's not supposed to be a murderer. You compare it to the video game, because in a video game, you necessarily have to keep killing people because that's how you play a video game. In a movie, it's just violence, gratuitous, and you can see him.
So what's your favorite scene from BVS then?
It doesn't work, man, because it betrays the essence of what the character is
from the movie.
If you want to set up Batman as a strong bad guy, as a badass, you already did it. You have him branding criminals. You have him hanging from the walls like he's an actual bat. And you already had the Batman-Superman fight where he beats Superman. How much of a badass?
What's different about that than the warehouse thing? The warehouse thing is just that exponentially more of Batman kicking ass.
Because it's just 2 minutes of Batman killing people to look cool.
He's not killing everyone in this scene.
Batman is one of the best sneaky ninjas in the world. He could have just entered and saved Martha without killing a bunch of people, because that would be more in line with what Batman is. Not this. This is a fucking video game, like you said. It's just violence for the sake of violence.
Oh, so the slow-mo Wonder Woman going psh isn't out of a video game cutscene? Like, it's the same exact thing.
In the middle of World War I. That justifies the violence.
And this is a World War III
sitting in a warehouse waiting for him to appear so they can get beat up. And it doesn't even keep water with the scene, because it goes all serious and dark, and then it ruins it by going for a joke in the end. When she saves Martha, he's like, "I'm a friend of your son's." He's like, "I knew because of the cape." What is that, man?
Levity?
Is that the best thing that they can give us?
The whole movie is dark. So they throw in a joke in the midst of a very, very badass scene. But literally everything you're describing that's wrong with my scene, they do in Wonder Woman. They do the same exact thing where it's
in World War I. And she doesn't kill people just because of the sake of killing people. She's basically defending the ground, opening the ground so people can go forward and take over the town that has already been sequestered. This is
but Batman's not killing people just to kill people.
It looks like it, man. He doesn't have to kill those 40 people. He can really.
He doesn't kill all of them. I would argue there's maybe one guy in that fight that he kills, and that's that he smashes and the neck goes. But otherwise, throwing knives,
smashes in the back of the wall, doesn't die. Come on, man.
Oh, but in the Dark Knight movies, all of the people that he smashes, and then they're just perfect because it's Christopher Nolan, and yes, he's beautiful and he gets to make it.
I haven't mentioned the Christopher Nolan movies. I'm not saying other movies are perfect. I'm just saying this is not the essence of what Batman is.
But there's other scenes in Wonder Woman that are better than the scene that you're presenting.
You pick a scene from the third act of the film, which everybody agrees is the worst part, and you're saying that's better?
Yeah.
Time. Wow. I got a lot more heat than I thought it was going to, but we still have some closing arguments here. Tim, you're going to go first. 45 seconds, please. Wrap up your arguments accordingly and present to the judges.
I picked that scene at the end of Wonder Woman in the third act because in the midst of a CGI bullshit ending that completely honestly ruins most of the first two acts that they've built up, there's a beautiful tender moment between two characters, not a superhero and a man or whatever. It's between a man and a woman, two people who love each other. It's a beautiful tender moment, and it makes you connect with the characters. The scene from BVS, again, I've said it, we've always wanted to see Batman be an utter badass. At least I have. Maybe I'm wrong. I've wanted to see him just beat the shit out of criminals because they deserve it, and they're trying to murder people, and they're trying to take down Gotham and Metropolis, and that's what he does. That scene that you said, slow-mo, you used the same arguments against mine.
Time. All right. Nazario, go over to you. 45 seconds. Wrap up your argument and present to the judges accordingly.
My scene sets up the Wonder Woman character. It's not only about action, it's about her motivation. They tell her, no, this is not what we came here to do. And she said, this is what I'm going to do. Because she's there to save humanity, to save families. It's no man's land, which is actually kind of a very clever thing because she's a woman. So it's no man's land. Well, I'm a woman. I'm going to push forward. It's also very empowering for her character. It's visually striking. It moves the plot forward. It has to do with it. It's violent because it's in the middle of World War I. In his scene, I never mentioned the slow camera. I said it as a thing for mine. I don't know what he mentioned for. It's not necessary. It's gratuitous. He already has been set as a badass because he already beat Superman. And it's just like a video game, like he says. It's just killing for the sake of killing. He could have easily saved Martha, like with his ninja skills, and they still go and ruin it with a then stupid joke in the end. Martha.
Time. All right. Okay. This is gonna be interesting. Kale Coho, if you are free.
I am indeed free.
Okay, you will. So, Caleb, you're going to go first, and you're going to tell us who gets your point.
Okay. I think Nazario kept throwing a lot of hits at Tim, and like normally I'm the guy that if you throw big hits, I gravitate to them. But I also really like big defenses, and I think Tim had like an ironclad shield up and defended almost everything Nazario threw at him. And also took down a lot of Nazario's like no man's land points. There's different scenes in the movie of this, and I never really got that exact same kind of targeted response from Nazario. So I'm going to give it slightly to Tim.
Tim? All right. So I actually disagree. I think Nazario took this. There was the point. It was essentially whenever Nazario was like, "Oh, this like your scene betrays Batman's logic." That was sort of like the turning point for me. That's where Nazario really got to take control. I wouldn't say this argument was the best representation of like defending like your own scene. I thought this was very attack heavy for both sides, and I thought Nazario won that for me. But it comes down to Boatman. So Boatman, it is tied up. Who gets your argument and why?
This was a really good fight right here. I think both competitors fought for their scenes very well. I think that Coho is right with Tim getting more deflection. I think he was able to take a lot of Nazario's argument, like the video game thing, and flip that around and kind of turn that and use that as a way to attack Wonder Woman. I think Nazario did make some good points in there, but I think Tim was just able to kind of deflect all of Nazario's points and use them against Nazario. So I'm giving the point to Tim.
All right. Well, Tim does go up 2-0 here. All right. So we now move on to question number 3, which is going to be MCU. And the question we gave the guys were, what is the most underwhelming MCU film? And we have some interesting choices ahead of you. Tim, you are going to be going first on this one. You have 1 minute. Time begins whenever you start talking.
In 2015, Avengers Age of Ultron premiered in theaters, and it was a heavy film. Not necessarily in its content of like it was heavy like dark. It was just heavy. There was a lot happening. And a couple months later, we got Ant-Man, a levity that was beautiful and fun and different for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So when Ant-Man and the Wasp was announced to come out a couple months after Infinity War, I was expecting some of the same where, Infinity War was going to come out, be this heavy movie. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp would come out, be really, really fun, but at the same time, give me some answers. Why wasn't Ant-Man in Infinity War? and just give me some stuff to enhance the Infinity War experience while we were waiting for Endgame and Captain Marvel. And unfortunately, Ant-Man and the Wasp didn't really do that. It's not a great film. It's a much lesser film than the first. It doesn't do a lot to further the characters other than bring back Janet, and it doesn't do anything to help Infinity War.
Time. All right, Nazario. 1 minute. Time begin. Oh, no, that's right. No, I'm right. I'm sorry. I thought I messed up, but we did not mess up. Nazario, it goes back to you. You have 1 minute. Time begins when I start talking. I will remind you that you do need this point to advance the speed round.
I think the most underwhelming film in the MCU is the recently released Captain Marvel. I think that film struggles under the weight of what it was asked to do. It's too much. It's a movie that is set in the past, so it's supposed to connect with the past of the characters. It's introducing Captain Marvel, who's supposed to be heading up the future of the MCU in Phase 4, and at the same time, it's supposed to be a link between Infinity War and Endgame. And maybe it was an unfair thing to expect, but I don't think the movie gets practically any of those things completely right. It feels awkward. The narrative is scattered. So many things happen at the same time, and I think she gets lost in her own movie. I did not end up coming out of that movie hyped for Endgame. I don't think it got its purpose. So very, very underwhelming for me.
All right. Ending 10 seconds early there. We'll see how that pays off. We're going to go into the 5 minute freeform, guys. You guys know how it goes. Let's get it on.
Well, $1 billion worth of people would disagree with you, whereas like Ant-Man and the Wasp made like 300 million. It was very clear that if people saw Ant-Man once and went, okay, I'm fine, I never need to watch that again, whereas people kept going back and back to see Captain Marvel because she's such a good character. It connects to other parts of the MCU. People eat that shit up. People love going, hey, it's that thing from that thing that I know. People love that. That's why people loved Captain Marvel. And it does connect to Endgame, and it made me so hyped to go in and see what she was going to do in Endgame. And we can't talk about Endgame because, you know, that's not part of this conversation, but I thought it did a very good job of hyping up Endgame.
I think Ant-Man it's always been the lower stakes of the MCU, so I don't know how you can find underwhelming a movie that is not designed to be spectacular. Those are meant to be more like palate cleansers after you can get the big movies. That's what they are always placed after the Avenger films. And the movie works. I don't know how much it was bothering you. You said you made the same argument that I said, that it didn't connect with Infinity War. You wanted something to be set up for the future, which I disagree with, because actually the main function of that movie is to explain the quantum tunnel. And
which we didn't know would be a part of Endgame until we saw Endgame. They did not market it.
You can see the after credit scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And
yeah,
you know how that becomes something that will have to play later. In Captain Marvel, everybody got the beeper. No, you can go.
Well, I'm just saying I disagree. We didn't know the quantum tunnel was going to be a part of Endgame just because it was in the post-credit scene. We could maybe put the pieces together by the time the trailers started coming out for Endgame, but I'm living in a world where I go into the theater, I see Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I walk out and I go, oh, I'm just so underwhelmed because Infinity War was so good, and Black Panther, which had come out in February, even before Infinity War, was so good, and Ragnarok before that, and then all of a sudden we just get Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is just, it's not a bad movie, it's just underwhelming. There's nothing that really happens until the post-credit scene, which sets up what's going to happen in Endgame, but the movie itself, there's nothing that really happens, whereas Captain Marvel sets up a lot of things about Nick Fury's character, about her character, just about the Kree and the Skrulls in general. It just got me excited for that big adventure. Like,
I don't think it sets up anything about Nick Fury. It just explains one little thing that it explains it in a stupid way. The point is that you got in Infinity War the Viper with Captain Marvel symbol, and you expected her to be like this big thing, and you expect like a big setup. And for the most part of the movie, she's not even in the center of the movie. A lot of things are happening, and she gets lost inside her own movie, and she doesn't have an engaging character. If
she's alongside, she's
there about the movie. You have Ben Mendelsohn's Skrull has more charisma than than Brie Larson projects. He goes for a very stoic performance, and she basically is on the sidelines of her own movie for most of the story because too many things are happening.
Just because the side character is exciting and cool doesn't mean that he's the focus. You walk out of that movie going, yeah, Ben Mendelsohn was the best part of that movie. That doesn't make the movie underwhelming. That just makes Captain Marvel's character, okay, she wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but she's still this big, powerful character, this powerful woman.
That movie, not knowing who Captain Marvel was. That's my thing. Maria Rambo had more character in 5 minutes and projected better than anything that Brie Larson did.
I completely disagree. You find out when you meet her, when you meet Carol at the beginning of the movie, she's just one of the baddies. We don't really know that at the time, but she's just off doing her missions, and then all of a sudden she finds out more, and we find out more and more about
that movie. They keep flipping the villains in that movie that you don't really have a base to stand on, and then when the twists come and the surprises come, you don't really connect with it. Because you have Diamond Hudson and you have Lee Pace from Guardians of the Galaxy, but you know them from that movie, and you know where they're going to end up. The problem with this movie is that you already know where it's going and what it's showing up from when it has.
I don't know where she's been the whole time in between the Beeper and this movie. That's what I went to that movie to find out, and I got an answer. With Ant-Man, yes, she was off helping other planets that didn't have the Avengers, and at least with Ant-Man and the Wasp. There's nothing new that you get from Scott Lang from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. He's more or less the same person. Oh, I'm sorry, Hope. They end up together, and then it does the lead in, and that's it. There's nothing that really changes other than Janet coming back, but that's more for.
Is one of the main focuses of the story going forward. This was supposed to set up Carol Danvers.
That's never been. Nobody has ever said, "Oh, Carol Danvers is going to lead the Avengers in Phase 4." No one ever said that.
Whew. Boy, it got hot. Got nice and steamy in here. We are now going to go to closing arguments. Nazario, you will be going first. This could potentially be your last 45 seconds, so use every second accordingly. Time begins whenever you start talking.
I think everybody has an idea that Captain Marvel is a very powerful character. You can see it in the final minutes of the movie where they finally decide to unleash her. They restrain her for most of the movie with this plot like, I don't really know who he is, who I am, this amnesia that I have, I don't remember my origin. And this kind of what works in other movies like the Bourne movies, but it doesn't really work here because we know more than the character knows for most part of the movie. And her character is very stoic and it doesn't connect. If you compare it to the similar Wonder Woman from DC, it's completely more engaging way to tell a story and a character that you end up connecting with. I have no positive or negative feelings for Carol Danvers. I'm just and like I said, Ant-Man and the Wasp at least sets up the quantum tunnel, which is an important part of the story. And in the post-credit scene, it becomes important for the future.
Excellent. All right, Tim, 45 seconds for your closing arguments. Time begins whenever you start talking.
You say you don't see Carol Danvers in full hero mode until the end. Iron Man 1, he's not in the real suit until last 30 minutes of the movie. Thor doesn't get his mighty hammer back in full Thor till the last act of the movie. Iron Man 3, barely in the suit. Ragnarok, stuck without his hammer and doesn't go full Thor until the end of the movie. It's a theme with these movies that we don't really see that hero reach their full potential, especially in the origin story. Captain America, there's the whole montage before we actually get to see him fight Red Skull as full Captain America. It's a thing. Ant-Man and the Wasp, nothing changes. All the characters are the same from the beginning to the end, except for Hank Pym. Post-credit scene, we don't know what it was setting up because we hadn't seen Endgame yet.
Time. Alrighty. Let's go to the judges because I don't know who I'm voting for yet. So we're going to go to Boatman first. Boatman, based on the arguments divided.
Oh, man, I hate that you're going to me first. Both had really good arguments. I think that Nazario gave me a lot of great arguments as to why Captain Marvel is an underwhelming character. But that is not the question. Tim gave me more arguments as to why Ant-Man and the Wasp is a underwhelming movie within the MCU, and Tim even reflected and said that, just because Ben Mendelsohn is the best part of the movie doesn't mean that Captain Marvel, the movie, is any more underwhelming. So I think Tim really deflected those points, and yeah, I do think that Tim had the better argument there.
All right, so Tim gets the point there. Caleb Coho will go next. Who gets your point and why?
This is so incredibly close. It's literally 36-35 on my board right now, points-wise. But Nazario was doing really, really, really well in selling me on the Captain Marvel aspect. And Tim was kind of behind. He kind of repeated a lot of the same points about Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then Tim gave one of the best closings I've ever heard in a Nerdgasm debate, where he turned around Nazario's whole argument of, like, the ending is when they finally unleash her, and he listed, like, 10 MCU movies that do the same thing that we don't consider underwhelming. So with that, I have to give Tim the slight edge and give him the point.
Well, with that being said, your winner advancing on to the finals to face somebody, that will be Tim Brzakala. He is your winner. I have to echo pretty well the same points as Caleb Coho. Nazario had this, and then Tim dug out one of the greatest closing arguments like I've ever heard. Yeah, I'm sort of speechless at the moment, but I want to go to Tim. Tim, you won 3-0. Although a lot of the scores have come down to split decisions, how do you feel about going up against Nazario?
I'm sweating right now, and it's not just because it's hot in my apartment, because that was actually that was crazy. Like I said at the top, I went into this not very prepared, but talking with some of my faction mates, I was told to be extra prepared for Nazario, and that's what I did. So I think it paid off, but great competitor. Holy shit, I'm actually sweating. That's not just me saying that.
All right. We don't know who your opponent is going to be because we actually haven't, at the time of this recording, we have not recorded the other semifinal. We don't know who the opponents are going to be quite yet. But of that side, if you were to pick somebody,
I believe Robert Parker's still in this, isn't he?
Yes. As of recording this, Robert Parker in canon is still in this.
Let me beat the shit out of Robert. He can't beat me in trivia, but let me take him on in Nerdgasm. That would be fun. That would be a fun matchup.
All right. Well, hopefully you get him. You might get somebody else. We'll see how the cards go. I'm going to go over to Nazario next. Nazario, the score does not accurately represent your performance. With the exception of the last question, the other two came down to split decisions, and I think you were able to hold your own against him very well. But how do you feel about your performance today and going up against him?
That was rough. I get the final decision. He even sold me with that closing because honestly, that is the advantage, and I have always said that in every match I have played. The last person that closes gets to say something without rebuttal, and he saved a gem for this one. It was not exactly the point that I was making with her just being great in the final 10 minutes of the film, but he sold it as it was. If I could have said something different, I would have said that, yeah, they show her, and that's the thing they do. But the thing is that even after showing her full powers, she just don't really still have an idea of what her character is. And well, I think we could have gone a little different in one of the other rounds, but it is what it is, and he's a strong competitor. And honestly, I think whoever is playing him better fucking prepare because things can get ugly. It's gonna be a fun final.
Okay. Go over to our judges next. Caleb Coho, how did you feel about this match?
This was really, really good. Nazario presented a lot of really strong arguments. Honestly, I think this match could have been played 3 different times and every outcome be different. This could have been a best of 3, a best of 7, a best of however many we needed to, and it would have been different every time. Nazario is very strong, and so is Brother Tim. I'm still reeling from that closing. That is actually a really brilliant closing argument. So, yeah.
All right, and Boatman, your final thoughts.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Good arguments from both Nazario and Tim. I think they both made really good points. I think that Tim just was able to every single one of my judging was super close every single time, and I think that shows that both these competitors were really good.
I'll echo the same statements. I think Tim's strength is more so prep. I mean, you look at like his coach is essentially, or one of his coaches or somebody in his faction is Cody, and Cody's very prep heavy, and they very very much so. They work out their debates and the points to bring up. And Nazario, what I love about him is that he's really good at sniffing up bullshit. And he can call you out on that. He did a very good job. Unfortunately, he was not able to get any. He wasn't able to get a majority point. But for me, I think his performance is one of the greatest, considering that he lost. But that is enough for us today. We'll go plugs to our competitors right quick. So go to Tim. Where can the nerds of the world find you?
You can find me on all the social medias: Letterboxd, Stardust, Twitter. Especially YouTube at Tim Loves Movies, where I do movie reviews, movie discussions. Recently did a great Avengers Endgame spoiler review with Kane McMillan, Cody Newberry, Robert Parker, and my wife Maggie. So that was really fun. So look out for that. Look out for anything else at Tim Loves Movies.
All right. And to Nazario, where can the nerds of the world find you?
You can find me all over these trivia leagues, playing mostly with my partner Mike Hanley and Blockbuster Video, who's gonna destroy some of those teams in these tournaments. And this is my handle in social media, basically the same one on everything. What I do warn you, it's gonna be in Spanish and mostly about toys.
All right. Well, for the rest of Multiplex, you can find this and have descriptive plugs in the little doobly-doo down below. Multiplex YT on Twitter, and obviously like and subscribe here on YouTube. If you think you can take on Tim, you can't quite yet. We're still in the process of what seems to be like a 4-year tournament, whatnot. But for our panelists, for Nazario, for Tim, I'm the Black Panther Brooklyn Vale. Cheers, guys, and as always, drive safely.